Okay. Mi chamocha va'elim Adonai. Mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh norati hilot osei feleh norati hilot josei feleh malchutecha va'uvanecha Moshe u'Miriam, Ze'elianu v'amru, Ze'elianu v'amru, Adonai barach le'olam, Amen. Da 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 da.
Yeah, Gary! Oh my gosh, I love this story. I could read this all year.
Well, you read it every year.
I know.
Michael,
yeah, exactly. Every year around this time, right? Around.
Absolutely.
Michael, you've turned it into a whodunit. Hardly wait.
That's amazing.
That's true.
All right, let me get right to it. Who would like to read? Why don't we get Dr. Ed here? Can you read that, Dr. Weiner?
Sure, just please add. Judah now approached him and said, by your leave, my lord, please give your servant a hearing, and do not let your anger flare up at your servant, for you are like Pharaoh. My lord asked his servants, do you have a father or a brother? And we said to my lord, we have an aged father and a young boy of his old age, whose full brother is dead. He alone was left of his mother, and so his father loves him all the more. You then said to your servants, bring him down here to me and let me lay my eyes on him. But we said to my lord, the lad cannot leave his father. If he leaves his father, he will die. You then said to your servants, if your youngest brother doesn't come down with you, you'll never see my face again. So when we went up to your servant, my father, we released him to the Lord's. We related to him, my Lord's words. And when our father said, go back and buy us a bit of food, we said, we can't go down. Only if our youngest brother is with us will we go down. For we won't be allowed to see the man's face unless your youngest brother is with us. Your servant, my father, then said to us, you know that of the two my wife bore me, one is gone from my side. And I said, surely he's ripped to shreds. I haven't seen him to this day. If you take this one too from me and some calamity befalls him, you will lower my gray head in woe to Sheol. Should I continue? Or are we?
Yeah, hang on. Let me give a little update on where we are in the story, because I forgot that we ended last week at a real cliffhanger. It was when Benjamin was caught with Joseph's his cup, his chalice, his thing that he uses to divine the future with, right? So This is Judah. Judah's coming to Joseph because he does not want to see Benjamin be made into a slave, right? Because they said whoever is caught with this, you can make him a slave. The brothers, isn't that right? The brothers said you can make this guy a slave, whoever it is, and of course it turns out to be Benjamin, which is going to kill their father Jacob, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
What's significant
Michael,
too, though?
Michael, it's
Go
another.
Gary first, and then Michael. Go Gary first.
Well, I was going to say what was significant is that when you look at the fact that it's in fact Judah who's pleading on behalf of Benjamin, because it was Judah whose idea it was to sell him into slavery.
That's correct.
And Judah's not the oldest brother. So
Reuben
why
is.
is Judah coming? And I know that there's about how at the time that Judah wanted to throw Joseph, sell him into slavery, it was before he himself had lost his two sons. Both of his sons, if you recall, one of them died. The Lord said that God thought that he was like a bad person and killed him.
Yeah.
And then the other brother wouldn't have children, to produce children with the widow.
Right.
So now it's like, in everything that Judah has gone through, the pain of losing his own children has made him more aware of the effect that it would have on his father if anything
If he
happened
lost
to
the other
Benjamin,
child. Right.
to the point where he's willing to sacrifice himself
Yep.
for Benjamin and for his father.
Absolutely.
It's like supposed to be one of the most heroic episodes in the Torah.
It's awesome. Oh, Cynthia is coming back into the room, and Dr. Michael.
Sure. Okay. Well, in this long paragraph, there's two things that I think that we need to discuss a little bit. Okay. One is, and this, of course, is Judah talking. Judah says that the boy says, whose full brother is dead. How did Joshua know that the brother was dead? How could he have known that?
You mean Joseph?
Joseph.
Right.
Well, no. I mean, Joseph, the one that is talking in here.
Judah. Yeah.
It's Judah.
It's Judah.
Yeah, Judah says, and we said to my Lord, my Lord, we have an aged father and a young boy of his old age, whose full brother is dead. How did he know?
Did Judah know he was dead? I think he probably figured he became he sold him into slavery, and how long you gonna last as a slave?
Okay, that's one. Okay, and the next one, Mike, at the end of the long paragraph, what is Sheol?
That's Hades.
Hades, hell, yeah. And it's
Actually, there is no hell.
that's
It means he's gonna die. Because in Judaism, there's no such thing as hell.
and the other thing is like Jacob is in this story so much as he's not even in there. He has, I mean, it's all happening in Egypt, and it's all about Jacob's feelings, right? It's all about the father. This father of ours is gonna go crazy. And it's also, I'm sure, and it's like what Gary was saying, that Judah comes up and he steps up. Everyone's trying to redeem themselves for throwing Joseph in the pit to begin with, it sounds to me. It's like Judah steps up. And they saw what that did to their dad when they threw Joseph in the pit, and then they gave him the coat and said he's gone, he's dead, he's been torn apart, and they saw how crushed he was. Yeah. So now it's Benjamin's turn, and now it's like the end of the world. It's the end of the world for Jacob. Sure. It's like, oh my gosh, if this is going to happen, Jacob is it's going to be awful. It's going to be horrible. But
Michael, one point in here, the brothers, when they went to the father and they went to Jacob, they didn't say that his son died, their brother died. They didn't say that. Okay. What they said is, take a look at this coat that is bloodied, and it was the father who said, "Oh my God, wild animals killed him."
Must have killed him, obviously. Yeah.
They never said that he was dead.
Right. Good point. Anybody else want to chime in here before we get going? This is really the beautiful, awesome, like big reveal. But go. Anybody? Annie? I can't see everybody. I think we're good. Okay. Does anyone want to start at number 30? Is Cynthia with us anymore? Myrna. How about Myrna?
No,
Now
one
you're
of the
okay.
things I was going to say is that, because they had no idea that Joseph was the high potentate that they were talking to.
Yes.
And it's kind of interesting because at that point, Joseph, of course, was older, more mature, and forgave them. I think when they really found out it was he, I don't think they would have normally forgiven them because of what they had done to him. I mean, I'm not so sure how many people would say, oh, okay, I'll forgive you, even though you hated me and sold me into slavery and all. It's just, but what I'm saying is Joseph has matured, and he's also in a position to make them, what was it, the dream that everybody bowed down to him?
Correct. Yep.
And so,
And they do.
right. So, and he was playing with them. Obviously, toying with them. But obviously,
Listen, he's got to get a little bit of revenge, you know.
but if they looked at him, maybe they didn't stare at his face. Wouldn't they have seen some resemblance or not?
No.
I think didn't he have makeup on? He had a veil on sometimes.
He did something to his face, I think, so that he didn't look the same.
Maybe that was the reason that he didn't want them to have any sort of an inkling of who he was.
No, he did not.
Yeah, I think he had a veil.
Until it was time to reveal himself.
Right, and you weren't. He used to eat alone. You weren't allowed to eat with him because of his high stature.
That's correct.
And another thing.
Michael, how do you get so excited over this?
Who, me?
You.
Me? I love it. I love this story. This story is the most fascinating story ever. And well, anyway, let's go through it so that we can talk about it at the end because it's so great. Myrna, do you want to continue? Want to go at number 30?
Okay. And now, if I go to your servant, my father, and the lad whose whole being is bound up in his is not with us, and he sees that the lad is not there, he will die, and your servants will have lowered your servant, our father's gray head, in anguish to Sheol. For your servant made himself responsible for the lad to my father, saying, if I don't bring him back to you, I will stand guilty before my father for all time. So now please let your servant remain as my Lord's slave in place of the lad, and let the lad go home with his brothers. For how can I go home to my father without the lad, and thus see the harm my father will suffer? Joseph could no longer restrain himself before all who were standing in attendance on him. So he cried, "Send everyone away from me," so that no one else was there when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. He gave voice to a loud wail, and the Egyptians heard. Pharaoh's palace heard. Joseph then said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father really alive?" But his brothers were unable to answer him. They recoiled in fear of him. Joseph then went on to say to his brothers, "Come, draw near to me." So they drew near. He said, "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold to Egypt. And now don't be troubled. Don't be chagrined because you sold me here, for it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. There have already been 2 years of famine in the land, and there remain 5 more years without plowing or harvesting. So God sent me ahead of you to assure your survival in the land and to keep you alive for a great deliverance. So it's not you who sent me here, but the God who made me a father to Pharaoh, a lord of all his household, a ruler of the whole land of Egypt."
Oh my gosh. This is incredible stuff. Whoa, can you imagine what these guys are looking at and seeing in their faces when
They must be scared to death.
I have to tell you, though, I'm laughing when the next thing down where it says 33, let the lad go home. all I could think of is let my people go.
That's next. That's in the next book.
I know,
That's true.
natural.
It's incredible. I can't even imagine their faces. That's what I would just love to see for real. Like, what are their
But
faces?
there are two parts to that, because their faces would have shown surprise, chagrin, and questionable. What is he going to do with us? On the other hand, there has to be tremendous guilt.
Right. But he, right off the bat, he says, don't be troubled.
Yes.
Don't be chagrined. For you sold me here, for it was to save lives. He's going to say this, I think, 2 or 3 more times. I mean, this is just off the bat, but he's going to drill it home. Even when Jacob, the father, dies, he's going to come back, because they're going to think he's, well, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I just love it. And I love what Gary was saying last week, too. What Gary was saying last week was like, he wanted to bring them down so much. He wanted to teach them a lesson so much. He could have easily said, oh, I'm Joseph way back when, wait when he first saw him. But nope, he's going to just say, oh, look at these guys. Look at these
But
guys.
it also
He had to get a little revenge first.
Yeah.
But I think he also did it to help them save face, though, too.
Well,
He
that's
didn't-
true.
As soon as he saw them, he didn't say, say my dream came true, and now here you are, Bob. You know what I mean? He
Bow
did give
down to
them a
me,
little...
yeah.
It does fulfill.
So I don't see it as just him playing with them. I see it in terms of him helping them save face a little bit.
All right.
Didn't Joseph say to his brothers, someday you're going to bow down to me?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Mhm.
And the most powerful tool in literature is dramatic irony. And this is one of the first examples where the
Right.
reader knows more that's going on
And the
than
brothers. Yeah.
the characters. And
Yeah.
what makes this so powerful is this is probably one of the first uses of dramatic irony, where it was just so, because you know what's coming and you're all excited. You're at the end of the, and he says, yeah, it's me. And makes it even more quote unquote, Mike Bodo, exciting.
Yeah.
I've never heard that expression, dramatic irony. I have never heard that.
Please look it up. It is the most powerful literature tool used by any author. Is called dramatic irony. That's when the reader knows more than the characters.
Than the
do.
characters.
Wonder
It's
if
like when you watch Columbo. It's
we
like when you
were
watch
growing
Columbo,
the old days.
One more thing.
right?
Columbo's like that, Gary? Is that right?
When you watch Columbo,
Right.
you always
One more
know.
thing.
Yeah.
Love it.
You always know ahead of time. Right at the beginning.
Oh, we
what
always
happened.
know who it is.
You're watching Columbo figure it out. You already know what Columbo's trying
Absolutely.
to figure out.
Yeah.
Just one more thing.
What is
Yeah,
it?
one more thing.
Just one more thing. I'm not saying
That's
that
Columbo, right?
Columbo.
Yeah, he always turns his back to the camera, then all of a sudden he stops, right? He's always that's dramatic irony. That's that dramatic irony. It's like, wait,
You know what I'm
hold
saying?
on,
But
you
at the
just see-
beginning of the episode, you always know
Who did
what
it?
happened. You know the
Oh,
murder. You know
always.
who the murderer is.
Absolutely.
You always know more than Columbo does. You're watching him figure it out.
Amazing, amazing. Anybody else want to chime in before we go further? I'm so excited.
I always didn't understand why Joseph didn't say to his, why don't you just put these people in jail and let them sit there for a while and figure it out themselves? I always thought with that passage, if I was him, I'd say, put these guys in jail, let them sit there and let them figure it out. But
If
it
I
didn't.
think
several years before, he might have done that.
you're right, Myrna. He grew up.
Right. Different time, different place. And he had the upper hand at this point.
Yeah.
I believe Simeon ended up in jail for a little bit of time. Not as long as Joseph.
He was the
in jail.
first one. He
Yeah.
was the first one, Shimon.
And
So
it
we-
was,
I think you've been around lawyers too long.
great. Do you want to keep going, Myrna? I love it. What you want to keep going?
Where am I?
Number 9.
Oh, okay. Hurry back up to my.
Oh,
Myrna?
we can't hear you, Myrna. Something happened.
Oh, did I get muted suddenly?
No, I think
So you're okay now.
now you're okay.
Oh, I have to have a bigger mouth. Okay, hurry back up to my father and say to him, thus says your son Joseph, God has made me a lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, do not delay. You can settle in the land of Goshen and be to me, you, your children, and your children's children, your flocks and herds, and all that you own. I will sustain you there, for there remain 5 more years of famine, so that you and your household and all that you own are not impoverished. Look, you can see with your own eyes, and so can my brother Benjamin, that it's my mouth speaking to you. Tell my father how they honor me in Egypt, and all that you have seen. Hurry up and bring my father down to here. He then fell weeping upon his brother Benjamin's neck, and Benjamin wept on his neck. He kissed all his brothers and wept with them. Only after this could his brothers respond to him. That's quite a crying session.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bunch of real guys there crying all over each other.
Well, hey, I think it was relief.
Oh, yeah.
So you want somebody else to read? You want me to continue?
How about Dr. Mike?
Okay, Michael, your turn.
Maybe he didn't hear me. I'll read. And the report was heard. Well, before we even go on, remember what the first thing Joseph did? Like, he wailed. It was like a wail. It was just screaming out loud. Everyone heard all over Egypt. All right. And the report was heard in Pharaoh's palace. Joseph's brothers have arrived, and this pleased Pharaoh and his courtiers. So Pharaoh said to Joseph, say to your brothers, do this, load up your beasts and head straight for the land of Canaan, and take your father and your households and come to me. I will give you the best that the land of Egypt offers. Come eat the fat of the land. Moreover, you are instructed to say, do this, take wagons from the land of Egypt for your little ones and your wives, and convey your father and come. And don't look with regret at your household goods, because the best that the whole land of Egypt offers is yours. What a welcome. Whoa.
They're not afraid
Well,
because they know what's
Joseph saved Pharaoh's people from death, from famine. So nothing was too good for him.
Reminds me of what Dr. Michael was talking about when we first got on. If you make a guy money, he's going to remember you, and you're going to be best buddies.
That's right.
This is great. Israel's sons, so Jacob's sons, Israel, set about doing this. Joseph provided them with wagons at Pharaoh's command, and he gave them provisions for the journey. To each he furnished a change of clothing, but to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of clothing.
That's his baby brother.
And to his father he sent some 10 asses laden with fine Egyptian goods, and 10 she-asses carrying grain, bread, and food to his father for the road. He sent his brothers forth, and as they were going, he said to them, don't be anxious along the way. They went up from Egypt and came to the land of Canaan, to Jacob their father. When they told him Joseph is still alive, and that he held sway over the whole land of Egypt, his heart froze, for he could not believe them. But when they told him all that Joseph had spoken to them, and when he saw the wagons that Joseph has sent to convey him, their father Jacob's spirit came alive. Israel said, enough, my son Joseph is alive. I must go and see him before I die. Oh my gosh, it's so incredible.
You're very dramatic. I like it.
What do people think? This is just, it brings me to tears. This must have been so, it's incredible.
Well, first of all, getting that news had to have brought his father to
Oh my God, of course.
Yeah. Oh my God, no more
God, my son was dead and now he's alive. And not only that, he's so important.
I just don't understand the arrogance of these brothers. Just the arrogance, They basically had him made a slave. They hoped he died. They told his father he's probably dead. And then he tells them, And rather than being shocked, their arrogance is, wow,
See what I did for you?
yeah.
No, but he does say that this was God's doing.
Yeah.
I have to go along with that because everything fell into place, like Michael would say, right? It all went along.
All right, Annie, do you want to pick it up at 46:1?
Israel and all his company set off on their journey, and they came to Beersheba, where he offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. God addressed Israel in a night vision, saying, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, Here I am. God said, I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make you a great people there. I myself will go down with you to Egypt, and I will most surely bring you back up as well. And Joseph will lay his hand upon your eyes. Jacob then moved on from Beersheba. The sons of Israel lifted Jacob their father, their little ones, and their wives onto the wagons that Pharaoh had sent to carry him. They took their livestock and the possessions they had amassed in the land of Canaan, and they came to Egypt. Jacob and all his progeny with him. His sons and his sons' sons were with him, his daughters and his sons' daughters, all his progeny that he had brought with him to Egypt. These are the names of Israel's sons who came to Egypt, Jacob and his sons. Jacob's firstborn Reuben, and Reuben's children Enoch, Palu, Hezron, and Carmi. If I'm saying these wrong, I apologize. Simeon's children were, and Reuben's children Enoch, Palu. Simeon's children were Jemiel, Jamin, Ohad, Jachin, Zohar, and Saul, the son of a Canaanite woman. Levi's children were Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. Judah's children were Onan, Shelah, Perez, and Zerah. But and Onan had died in the land of Canaan,
Right.
and the sons of Perez were Hezron and Hamul. Issachar's children were Tola, Puva, Eob, and Shimron. Zebulon's children were Sared, Elon, and Jahileel. These were Leah's sons, whom she had borne to Jacob in Paddan Aram, along with Dinah, his daughter. His sons and daughters were 33 persons in all, male and female. God's children were Ziphion, Haggai, Shuni, Uzban, Eri, Arodi, and Areli. Asher's sons were Imnah, Ishva, Ishvi, and Beriah, and their sister Sarah. Beriah's children were Eber and Malchiel. These were Zilpah's children, whom Laban had given to Leah his daughter. She bore these to Jacob, 16 persons. The sons of Jacob's wife Rachel were Joseph and Benjamin, born to Joseph in the land of Egypt, who Asenath, daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, bore to him were Manasseh and Ephraim. Benjamin's children were Bela, Becca, Ashbel, Gera, Naaman, Ai, Rosh, Hupim, and Ard. These were Rachel's children who were born to Jacob, 14 persons in all. I'm not butchering these.
You're doing
No, you're fine.
Dan's sons were Hushim. Naphtali's sons were Jaziel, Guni, Ezer, and Shalem. These were the children of Bilhah, whom Laban had given to Rachel his daughter. She bore these to Jacob, 7 persons.
Woo, we did it. You did it, Annie. You got through all
It was terrific, Annie.
Why don't you wrap up the...
And Annie, you really didn't know you spoke Hebrew.
There you
No,
go.
no.
Do you want to wrap it up? Are we getting close to the end?
Yeah, I think so.
Do you want me to read the last one?
Yeah, just finish this page.
All the people who came with Jacob to Egypt, who came forth from his loins, Apart from the wives of Jacob's sons were 66 people in all. And the sons of Joseph bore to him in Egypt were 2 individuals, the members of Jacob's family, who came to Egypt were 70 in all.
Wow. All right. Thank you, Annie. Bracha, would you want to pick it up?
Judah he sent ahead of him to Joseph to show him the way to Goshen. So they came to the region of Goshen. Joseph harnessed his chariot and went up to meet his father Israel in Goshen. He presented himself to him and threw himself on his neck, weeping all the time. Israel said to Joseph, "Now that I have seen your face, for you're still alive, I can die at last." Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's household, "I'm going to go up and tell Pharaoh. I will say to him, my brothers and my father's household who were in the land of Canaan have come to me. The men are shepherds. In fact, they're breeders of livestock, and they have brought their flocks and their herds and all that they own. Therefore, when Pharaoh sends for you and asks, 'What do you do?' say, 'Your servants have been breeding livestock from youth onwards to now, both our households and our father's households, in order that you may live in the region of Goshen, for Egyptians find shepherds abhorrent.'" Joseph then went and told Pharaoh, saying, "My father, my brothers, their flocks, their herds, and all that they own have arrived from the land of Canaan, and now they are in the region of Goshen." Out of all his brothers, he picked 5 men and presented them before Pharaoh. When Pharaoh said to his brothers, "What do you do?" they said to Pharaoh, "Your servants are shepherds, both our households and our father's households." They went on to say to Pharaoh, "We have come to stay in the land because there is no pasture for your servants' flocks, for the famine is oppressive in the land of Canaan. Now we ask you to let your servants settle in the region of Goshen." Pharaoh then said to Joseph, "Now that your father and brothers have reached you, the land of Egypt is before you. Settle your father and brothers in the best part of the land. Let them settle in the region of Goshen. And if you know of any able men among them, make them overseers of my livestock." Joseph then brought his father Jacob and stood him before Pharaoh. And Jacob greeted Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Jacob, "How many years have you lived?" And Jacob said to Pharaoh, "The span of the years of my lifetime has been 130. Few and miserable have been the days of the years of my life. They have not attained to the length of the days. They have not attained to the length of the days of the years of my fathers when they were alive." Jacob then gave Pharaoh a parting blessing, and he left Pharaoh's presence. Joseph settled his father and his brothers. He gave them a holding in the land of Egypt, in the best part of the land, in the region of Ramesses, as Pharaoh had commanded. Joseph also provided food for his father and his brothers and all his father's household, according to the number of their children. At that time, no food was to be had in the entire land.
I don't see too good.
Yeah, you're just frozen. You're freezing up a little bit, Bracha. You want to take it at 13? I think you're back.
Yes, at this time, no food was to be had in the entire land, for the famine bore down very heavily. The land of Egypt and the land of Canaan languished on account of the famine. Joseph now collected all the silver found in the lands of Egypt and Canaan as payment for the grain that the people were buying, and Joseph brought that silver into Pharaoh's palace. When the silver in the lands of Egypt and Canaan was spent, all Egypt flocked to Joseph, saying, "Let us have food. Why should we drop dead in front of you because the silver is exhausted?" Joseph replied, "Bring your livestock, and I will give it to you in exchange for your livestock, if the silver is exhausted." They therefore brought their livestock to Joseph, and Joseph gave them food in exchange for horses, holdings of sheep and cattle, and asses. He kept them alive with food in exchange for all their livestock. That year ended, And they approached him in the following year, and silver is spent, and our animal holdings belong to my Lord. There's nothing left before my Lord but our bodies and our soil. Why should we die before your eyes, both we and our soil? Buy us and our soil in exchange for food. We and our soil will be slaves to Pharaoh. Distribute seed so we can live and not die, so the land is not deserted. Joseph then bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh, for each Egyptian had sold his field because the famine had overwhelmed them. Thus the land came into Pharaoh's possession, and thus he made serfs of the people from one end of the Egyptian border to the other. Only the land belonging to the priests did he not buy, for the priests had an allotment from Pharaoh, and they ate their allotted portion that Pharaoh had given them. They therefore did not sell their land.
Maybe we can pause here for 1 second. Is this, Dr. Michael, is this part of that allotment for the priests that came after with Moses?
That's exactly right. I mean, you know, one of the things that we need to sort of kind of understand is that the Bible evolved, the Torah evolved. We were learning things as we were going along. So if Pharaoh did not take the land from the priests, then when the lands were being apportioned to everybody, the people from the tribe of Levi, neither the Levites nor the priests got any land either. So it came from here.
Wow.
May I ask a question? One of the things that they had said was that the Egyptians considered flocking and raising flocks and herds and all abhorrent. What, I had never heard that before. Does anybody know why? Remember way back he said that
because people who did it were slaves, maybe. I don't know.
Animals.
I don't know, but the way he
They
said it
worship
really
the gods and
sounds like
stuff.
they were like shunted off. I mean, it's no one was like talking to. I don't know. I just didn't understand why that had come up at all.
I thought it was because the animals, like they worship certain animals, or like they were like gods.
That could
or
be.
whatever.
It could be Gary, right?
But I was
They
thinking,
were all the animals. They were all gods.
but what I was thinking is, how can a people live without having crops and without having these people, you know,
They did, but they were slaves who did it.
like they were the abhorrent ones.
Right. So they probably
Right.
were like the lower classes that were
Correct.
They raised livestock, like Joseph was telling his brother. Just tell them you do that, and they'll leave you alone. I guess. I don't know.
They leave you alone.
But the interesting
Absolutely.
thing too, isn't it, that here comes Joseph. He's taking everything from them. it's
Oh yeah.
it's a big deal. It's how this whole story plays out. However, without Joseph, many people would have died.
They would have died.
Many people in Egypt would have died. Many people in
Right.
Canaan would have died. The whole
Absolutely.
area. You know, here we have somebody who
Doesn't
really.
it remind you of Jacob and Esau, who sold his birthright for food?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Very good. Right. They're dying. They're dying. So yeah, they give everything to Joseph now. Wow.
So they could get some food.
Pharaoh.
They're hungry.
Yeah, that's interesting. All right, we're getting close to the end, I think. Who wants to pick it up at 23? Anybody? Any takers? I can say it. If Joseph then said to the people, "See now that I've brought you and your land for Pharaoh. Here is seed for you. Sow the land. When harvest comes, you must give Pharaoh a fifth, and the other 4 portions will be yours for seeding the field and to be food for you and your households, and for your little ones to eat." And they said, "You have given us life. May we find favor in my Lord's sight and be serfs to Pharaoh." Joseph made this a law to this day for Egypt's soil. 1/5 is Pharaoh's. The priest's land alone did not become Pharaoh's. So this is bigger than 1/10, right? The tithes. This is
Yeah.
That's a pretty big tithing.
Yeah, it's a fifth.
Israel thus settled in the land of Egypt, in the region of Goshen. They struck roots in it, were fruitful, and multiplied greatly. All right, that's the end of this week's
Yeah.
Parsha. This is oh, it's just so incredible. What a story. What a great wrapping up of the whole thing. Huh. It's fascinating. Beautiful.
And Michael, you know, this actually is the beginning, because, you know, now we were in Egypt and eventually we were there for 400 years.
Right.
This really was our first exile.
Interesting. And you
Yeah,
went
it
in
was
pretty
an
well,
exile.
like, right? They went in.
But it wasn't a forced exile.
Well, at the very beginning,
It was an
when
exile because of necessity. Because of necessity, because there was famine.
Okay, but you remember that what happened is that during the 400 years that we were there, eventually Pharaoh, they didn't remember how did
Because
they,
it was another Pharaoh who didn't remember them.
and the hero
Didn't remember Joseph.
remember it. We were already slaves. So at that point, from that point on, you could not return to Canaan. So we were in exile.
Hmm.
Yeah, and there's a there is a midrash that they talk about that the land of Goshen was at the border, and the Pharaoh who didn't know them, who was Ramses II, was afraid that if he was invaded, that these people, the Hebrews, would help the invaders. That's why he made them slaves.
Well, they had been slaves for many years.
Well,
before.
yeah.
But, you remember that the story is that the courtiers to Ramses II came to him.
Right.
And they say, you know, the Hebrews have gotten too big.
There's too many people.
And what would happen if they rise against us? So they had,
That's right.
had slaves in there for dozens and dozens of years prior to that.
And they talk, and there is also, when they talk about their exodus from Egypt, it wasn't supposedly a ragtag group, that they were pretty good fighters.
Okay.
Right. I was going to add that there was 70.
They were pretty good fighters because they did pretty good.
Well, if I remember correctly, and you know, you guys can chime in on this. If you remember, Moses grew up in the throne of Egypt.
Right.
And he was going to be the next Pharaoh.
That's correct.
Even though that was from Pharaoh's sister.
Yeah. And not even blood relative.
And not a real blood relative, because Pharaoh actually had a son.
He did. And then he became the Pharaoh.
Okay. But Moses grew up with military prowess.
Oh, yeah.
And in fact, oh, yes. And in fact, he conquered Ethiopia.
Yeah.
Moses came back and he was the conqueror of Ethiopia.
Yeah.
Cush. Yeah.
Everything he did, he referred to the Pharaoh as his father. You know, this is for you.
Right.
And Moses married a Cush.
And Moses married a Cush. In fact, we did that a couple of days ago. Yeah. So one of the things that we've been doing is that we have had 2 sessions on heroines of the Bible.
Yeah.
We actually went through that.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we did. We talked about his Cushite wife.
His Cushite woman, right.
Was it Jochebed, Joseph's mother?
Jochebed, yes.
Whatever, right? No, I remember that. So why did she become the heroine?
Well,
she saved her son.
Okay, two things that we wanted to do is we wanted to explain to everybody that we the Jewish religion is the most matriarchal of all religion, of the major religions. And how 3,500 years ago, we were already writing what women were doing. The other nations did not do that at all. Women didn't even show up at all. And here we have many of them. Well, Zipporah.
It wasn't only Jochebed, but the two midwives who also were heroines who saved babies.
And they saved babies, and you know, they did everything that they were supposed to do. So the whole idea is to talk about what the women did and the fact that we wrote it down forever.
Right.
Nobody else did that. So that was part of heroines of the Bible.
Right.
No, if they did so much, if the women were in high regard, why, when it came to learning the Bible, learning Hebrew, the Talmud, they were not allowed to go in to the the synagogue or anything else? And
no. This is you're talking about Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
You're talking about.
No, but I think the same philosophy carried over. The Jews were the.
All right. Myrna,
listen, things change.
Maureen is bringing up a good point. So let's talk about the two major centers of Judaism in exile. One was Spain,
right?
Okay, and then eventually after the expulsion of Spain, then of course, you know, we went into Europe and Eastern Europe.
Right.
In Spain, the women were learned.
Absolutely.
So the Sephardic women are always learned. And in fact, many of them ended up being rabbis. It was only we, the Ashkenazi in Eastern Europe, that changed that.
Myrna, the great Rashi,
right?
The great philosopher Rashi had no sons. He had 4 daughters. His daughters, he taught his daughters Torah, Talmud. They wore talits. So it happened.
So
it happened.
So we should have been all Sephardic Jews instead of Ashkenazi.
Well, and Myrna,
I'm part Sephardic, so it's okay.
I think that
my mother's family.
We ought to mention one other thing. I think that we said it before, but let's sort of kind of remind us. Okay. Now Rashi, of course, you know, it's a big deal. You know, everybody talks about how great Rashi was. During his lifetime, he had a lot of people who disagreed with him.
Oh, I know.
Remember, the ones that disagreed with him the most and who
his son-in-law
reference were his 4 daughters.
And a son-in-law who didn't like him much either.
Yeah, son-in-law too, but since we're talking about women,
his daughters? Oh, yeah.
They were very learned.
Absolutely.
Very
fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
Does anyone want to add any more to this? Because I mean, I have to kind of cut out early tonight because I got a big thing going on Thursday night, Christmas Eve service at our.
Oh, I know.
It's crazy. I don't know what we're doing. We're doing all these crazy a cappella things.
Are you Zooming? Or are you actually going to be there?
I will be there. There's only going to be like maybe 4 or 5 of us that are actually going to be in the sanctuary. I'm in charge of all the technical video, audio, making sure that we're going to have videos that run in of people singing and
oh, wonderful.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
I hope it's wonderful.
You will have a blessed Christmas, I'm sure.
Thank you. I hope everyone had a great Hanukkah. Happy Hanukkah, everyone.
I'm glad it's over.
And thank you, Dr. Ed, for feeding the hungry on Christmas. I did
absolutely. That's what you have to do.
Merry Christmas,
Jonathan.
And let us all hope for a happy, healthy new year, free of
for
COVID.
Everybody.
Without COVID.
Amen.
Maybe I'll see you at Christmas, Michael.
Yeah, I'd love to pop in. I should really pop in, but it's going to be tricky. We'll see. We'll see what goes on.